What's up, everybody? Ron Harris here, MD Online Editor. Good topic today because most of you guys watching are in the off season now. The off season is, despite the name, it's not a time where we take off from training. It's usually when we try to train heavier, try to put muscle on, but we also eat a lot more. We eat a lot more calories, a lot more carbs, probably let ourselves have a little more in the way of cheat meals because the goal during the off season is to make improvements to add muscle mass. If you've already got a good amount of muscle mass, maybe you're looking to add it in specific areas. But all good things must come to an end. How do you know when it's time to end your off season? If you're a competitor and you've got a contest on the horizon, there's your answer for you. You know that there's a contest prep phase, typically 16 weeks. That's the average amount of time most people give themselves to diet. So at 16 weeks out or away from your competition, that's the end of your off season and the beginning of your contest prep. So it's a no-brainer for you guys who compete, girls. But for everybody else, how are you supposed to know? When is it time? When is enough enough? How do you know when the gains aren't coming anymore? Another thing to consider, even if you don't compete, most of us do like to look better for the warmer weather. Depending on where you live, if you're in most of the United States, warmer weather is going to start around May. So you got to think about it that way. Give yourself, even if you're not getting into contest condition, you definitely want to be much, much leaner than you probably are right now. Depending on how much body fat you have accumulated over the past few months, that's how long it's going to take you. So if you want to be in shape, have some abs, some veins, by let's say in the US, we consider Memorial Day, which is the holiday at the end of May. That's sort of the beginning of summer, even though summer doesn't officially start until June 21st or something. But you still want to make sure you have enough time. So if it's May, backtrack from there, May, April, March, February, you'd want to start your off season. You want to start cleaning up your diet, doing a little bit more cardio by beginning of February, which is, geez, coming right up. We're already halfway through January right now. So these are goals if you have for competing or just for looking good at the beach or just walking around. Because I don't know about you guys, but I like to be lighter and look leaner, look better in the warmer months because, like I said, in this part of the U.S. and a lot of the parts of the U.S., you're only able to wear things like tank tops and shorts outside maybe 3, 4 months out of the year. The rest of the year we're covered up. I mean, it gets really, really cold, even with global warming. It still gets very, very cold in a lot of places, and you're going to be walking around in obviously long pants, jackets, hats, mittens, gloves, whatever to stay warm. But let's talk about when you know that the off season is no longer working for you. Because just like you wouldn't want to stay on a contest diet forever, that wouldn't be a good idea. Eventually, staying at a very low body fat for a very long time, your immune system is going to start to suffer. You probably start losing muscle mass. I don't know if any of you guys have experienced this, but if you do stay very, very lean for a very long time, for those of you who've competed in multiple shows and you've tried to hold your peak for weeks and weeks, it gets increasingly difficult because your body's starting to fight you and it's starting to rebel because your body always wants to be in that homeostasis in a place where it feels comfortable. And being very, very lean, it doesn't feel comfortable. It doesn't feel comfortable if you're overweight either. So that's what you want to look at. First thing I would look at is how's your sleep? Are you sleeping well or are you snoring? If you're snoring, very good chance you have sleep apnea, especially if you're a bigger, heavier person. You'd know because you'd wake up many, many times a night, and it's because you stopped breathing. Some of you guys who have gone the road of having a sleep study done and wear a CPAP machine, you found out probably in those sleep studies that your breath was stopping. You stopped breathing anywhere from 10 to 100 times a night. That's scary. You can die. You can die from sleep apnea. Personally, I don't get anywhere near as heavy in the off season as I used to. If you see in the thumbnail, that's when I was at my biggest slash fattest and heaviest. I was 245. That was, I believe, five winters ago, 4 or 5 off seasons ago. I got up to 245 at a height of, I was probably already a little under 5'8" by that point. My height's been going downhill ever since my late 30s, I believe. But if your sleep is suffering, if you're so heavy that your sleep is suffering, you're not going to be recovering properly. You find you're exhausted a lot of the time during the day. You're certainly not going to be having great workouts. You're not going to be recovering from those workouts and growing if you're not sleeping properly. So in that case, even if you don't want to end your off season yet, I would definitely just cut back on the carbs, pick up a little bit more cardio, and drop a little bit of that fat because it's not doing you any favors. The late great Arthur Jones, who invented the Nautilus machines, very blunt guy. He had a lot of catchphrases, a lot of things I repeat because he had quite a wit, a dry wit. And one of them, when he was referring to getting fat in the off season, bulking, he said a car is not going to run any better if you fill up its trunk with sand. So you're stronger with more calories, you're stronger with more carbs. Are you stronger with 1,000 more calories than you need a day? Do you need 1,000 grams of carbs more a day? Probably not. See, you want to be in a caloric surplus. You don't want to be in a caloric deficit. You need to be taking in more calories than you're expending if you want to grow. But there's a fine line, because if you start taking in a lot of extra calories, way more than you need to recover and grow, you start collecting body fat. You start getting fatter, and we don't want that as bodybuilders. We want to gain mostly muscle. For most people, most of the time, you are going to have to gain a little bit of fat to gain muscle. Shouldn't be too much, though. It shouldn't be a lot of fat. I think an acceptable ratio is probably about 60% muscle, 40% fat, 50-50. Now you're starting to get questionable. When you're gaining more fat than you are muscle, that's when you've gone much too far and you need to cut back. I encourage people to keep food diaries, because people want to know, well, how many carbs should I eat? How many calories should I eat? And the answer is, I don't know. Nobody can tell you that. Nobody can give you just a blanket prescription, because we're all different. We all have different amount of muscle mass, activity levels, metabolic rates are different. So I might be able to eat 500 grams of carbs a day and not get fat. I might be able to eat 5,000 calories a day and not get fat. Somebody else might eat that same amount and start getting fat very quickly. Likewise, somebody else might be able to eat a lot more than I do and take in a lot more carbs than I do too, and still not get fat, whereas I would have gotten fat long before I reached that point. So we're all different. That's why I say keep a food diary. Most people only do that in prep, but I strongly encourage you to do it in the off season too, because it's the only way to keep track and know where to add and where to subtract things. So you should do body composition testing of some type of body fat test once a month minimum in the off season, so you know what's happening to your body composition, because the scale is only going to tell you if you gained weight. Weight can be in the form of muscle or fat. So if you gain 10 pounds, if that entire 10 pounds was fat, you're not doing very well. You're not succeeding. You just got fat, which, go to Walmart or go to the beach or any amusement park, you'll see plenty of big obese people. You're not accomplishing any more than they are just by overeating. So the first thing, like I said, I would look at is sleep. If you're not sleeping correctly, it's probably time to drop some weight, cut the carbs back, pick up a little bit more cardio than you've been doing. Another thing to really look at is your health. Now, first thing you should look at is blood pressure. If your blood pressure is starting to go up, and this is independent of PED use and things like that, if you're getting high cholesterol, high blood pressure, that's a sign that you're probably too heavy and you need to cut back. You need to drop some weight. So for a lot of you, that's not going to be a concern. You're not going to be showing any negative health markers. But like I said, the body does adapt. So if you're on a contest diet for long enough, eventually you're not going to get any leaner, and just trying to maintain that level, that crazy low body fat level over a very long period of time, it's going to have negative consequences eventually. Eventually your immune system starts breaking down. You will start losing muscle mass. You'll get exhausted. There are also negative effects when you stay heavy for too long. And one of them is, aside from health, is that you're just not going to make any more gains. Your body's going to get used to taking in a ton of calories every day, a ton of carbs, training heavy. It's going to adapt to that, and you're not going to make any more progress. One reason that I strongly believe that competitors consistently make better gains, aside from the motivation of wanting to improve and do better at shows, which is the mental aspect, and you can't ignore that. But the fact that they have the phases of the year, they do bulk up and gain a little bit more body fat at times, and then they have their prep phase where they lose the body fat, take their body weight down, and that sort of primes them for growth. Any of you guys who have either, or girls, have competed or just gotten very lean, you'll notice that after a while, once you go back to eating more and doing a little bit less cardio, you start making new gains that you didn't have before. You're not just putting on previously existing muscle mass, you're actually adding new muscle mass. That's because your body is primed to grow. Just like right now, your body, if you're heavy, your body's probably primed to get back in shape again because it's been used to doing this. It's been used to eating a lot and not doing much in the way of cardio. You've just been doing weight training. Maybe you've been hitting cardio 2 or 3 times a week for 20 minutes, nothing major at all. I know a lot of you guys don't do any cardio in the off season, which if you're a hard gainer, if you're someone with a real high metabolism, if you're very young, that's fine. Any of you people who are over 40, over 50, guys, please do your cardio. Heart and lung health is much more important to your life, to living and staying healthy and alive than your muscle mass. I know cardio is not the most exciting thing. I don't particularly enjoy it either, but you got to do it. But like I said, the off season can't last forever. If you've noticed a lot of these, what I call them perma-bulkers, they're in a permanent off season. They never come down. They stay heavy. They keep a large amount of body fat. And if you notice, most of these people, after a certain point, they never get any bigger. It's because their bodies, they're just used to it. That's why I strongly suggest, even if you're not going to compete and you're not interested in getting super lean at all, I still suggest that after probably about 4 months max on an off-season program of eating all that food, a lot of carbs, not doing a lot of cardio, do a mini cut. Just go for, say, 4 to 6 weeks. That's all it takes. 4 to 6 weeks where you take your carbs down, take your calories down, pick up the cardio. You'll drop, depending on who you are, you'll drop anywhere from 5 to 15 pounds of body fat in that amount of time. Then your body's going to be primed again to grow. So then when you reintroduce more food, more carbs, and take the extra activity of the cardio back down, now you're going to start growing again. Because that's what this is all about. We're trying to make progress. We're trying to improve. So that's why. So when to end your off season? Like I said, if you compete, you already know the answer. You know it's when it's going to be time to end your off season because you're going to transition into a contest prep phase. For everyone else, again, I would look at your sleep. If you're not sleeping very well, if you're snoring, if you have sleep apnea, it's probably time to cut it short, guys. At least go on a mini cut. If your gains have stopped completely, even though you're slamming the food down, training like a beast, you stop making gains, probably means your body's it's all set. It's used to this. It's not gonna give you any new gains at this point. You're gonna have to do either a full prep or just a mini cut, something like that to reset the whole system. That's been my little spiel about when to end your off season today. Appreciate you guys watching. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Hit the little bell thing so you get notified when we put out a new video. And that's it. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.